Hi, I'm Francesco Fontana, International Technical Director for Toni & Guy and Label M.
My name is Siobhan Golden, International Technical Director also for Toni & Guy and for Label M. We're here today shooting our new step-by-step collection, Duality.
Even though we're going to be working with similar section and patterns, the approach to a technique is going to be different, and that is really to create a very unique approach to the outcome of the shape. Today I'm working with a crescent section, following also the guideline of the haircut, but the result that I wanted to create is much bolder and much more contrasting in color. My color palette is going to be blues and orange.
So I'm going to be working with those same crescent sections to create internal areas of block pre-lightener. The idea is, by using the pre-lightener, we create a contrast in texture that's emphasised by the curly hair. We're going to work from the perimeter with a reverse graduation of colour, so we create strength at the perimeter and then work towards that internal panel of lightener. The opposite will be done through the top, so that we meet connecting in the curvature of the head along those crescent sections. Now we're going to have a look at the step-by-step for each technique.
Before the colour application takes place, the technique is mapped out using varying depths of crescent partings. This will ensure the correct colour and technique of application is applied. A crescent section is taken from the recession to then behind the ear. This is then repeated on the opposite side. A second crescent section is taken parallel to the first, about 1 inch thick. At the side and the back, depending on the length of the hair, will determine how deep and how many crescent partings are taken. The first crescent parting is taken above the occipital bone. If needed, a high crescent section is taken directly above this. The final section is the fringe area. This is created using 2 curved sections on either side that meet at the profile. Siobhan is starting at the back. The first section is colour blocked with the colour damson. First, apply the colour damson to the hairline and outline of the section. Taking a horizontal parting with the tail comb, the colour damson is applied generously to all of the root area. A slice is then taken with the tail comb and a clear mesh is placed underneath the hair. The colour damson is then taken through to the mid-lengths and ends. When working with long hair, you can lengthen the mesh by adding another mesh. The colour is applied to the clear mesh and then the slice is then placed onto the mesh to ensure the two adhere to each other. Another slice is taken, this time placing a colour board underneath the slice for support as the colour is applied to the mid-lengths and ends with the colour damson, ensuring you apply plenty of product. This application is then repeated throughout this section. Once complete, touch over the hair to ensure thorough application, then isolate the section with the clear mesh. With Francesco's technique, the hair has been pre-lightened to a pale yellow undercoat. Firstly, tangerine is applied to the outline of this section. Starting at the nape, a horizontal parting is taken with a tail comb and the colour tangerine is applied to the root area. Continue with this application throughout this section. Once the roots are complete, take the colour tangerine through to the mid-lengths and ends. Once this section is complete, isolate off with clear mesh. Siobhan now progresses to the second section, which is a high crescent section above the occipital area. Within this section, a root extension technique is going to be applied. Damson is applied first of all to the root area. For ease of application, the section is subdivided with a crescent parting and a clear mesh is placed underneath. The root area is then extended by applying more damson colour. Pre-lightener is then applied to the mid-lengths and ends, incorporating the mesh extension technique. Then turning the brush onto an angle, the pre-lightener is blushed into the root extension area. This will ensure a soft blend of the two colours. Once the subsection is complete, isolate off with clear mesh and repeat on the remaining subsection of hair. Once this section is complete, isolate off with clear mesh. Francesco is now progressing on to his next section. A colour block technique is applied throughout this section. The coloured denim is applied firstly to the outline of the section, then taking horizontal partings, a clear mesh is applied directly underneath the first section of hair and the hair is combed onto the mesh. The coloured denim is taken through immediately to the ends. Apply plenty of product to gain maximum absorption of colour and ensure coverage. Continue this application throughout the section. Once complete, isolate off with the clear mesh. Siobhan is now moving to the first crescent section above the ear. The application within this section is a reverse root stretch. A waved parting is taken and the colour rose hip is applied with a long root application. A mesh is placed underneath the section, incorporating the mesh extension technique. Then pre-lightener is applied to the ends, first working up to 1 inch away from the root application. Then turning the brush onto an angle, the pre-lightener is blushed onto the colour rose hip. Isolate this off with clear mesh. A second wave parting is taken. Damson is first applied to the medium root area. The hair is over-directed onto the previous mesh and the pre-lightener application on the mid-lengths and ends is repeated, blushing the pre-lightener up to the damson colour and isolate this off with clear mesh. The third part of this section, rose hip is applied to a small root area and the pre-lightener application is then repeated on the middle lengths and ends and then blushed up to the rose hip colour. Once the section is complete, isolate off with the clear mesh. The technique within this section is then repeated on the opposite side. Francesco is now working on the crescent section above the ear, which is colour blocked with the colour tangerine. The colour tangerine is painted around the outline of the technique. The towel comb is used to elevate the hair around the hairline for ease of application. Place the section of hair onto a mesh and take the colour tangerine through to the middle lengths and ends. Once the section is complete, fold the mesh over to isolate. The technique within this section is then repeated on the opposite side. Siobhan is now working with a pre-lightener which is colour blocked to the internal crescent section. Starting at the roots first, then in over-directing very fine sections onto the mesh, pre-lightener is applied to the mid-lengths and ends. The technique within this section is then repeated on the opposite side. Francesco is working on the internal crescent section, which is colour blocked with a coloured denim. The hair is elevated using the towel comb and the coloured denim is applied to the root. A clear mesh is then placed underneath the section and the hair is over-directed onto the mesh. The coloured denim is then applied to the root and taken through to the middle lengths and ends. The section is isolated with the clear mesh. The technique within this section is repeated on the opposite side. On Siobhan's technique, the fringe area is colour blocked using damson. Starting with the hairline, apply the colour damson, tilting the brush on an angle to detail the colour. Taking diagonal partings, apply damson to all of the root area. Once the roots are complete, take a slice and place a clear mesh underneath and apply the coloured damson to the mid-lengths and ends. This application is repeated through the rest of this section. Once complete, isolate this off with clear mesh. On Francesco's fringe area, take a diagonal parting, placing a clear mesh underneath, apply tangerine to the root area and the denim to the mid-lengths and ends to create a root shadow effect. To isolate this slice, apply a clear mesh. Continue with this application throughout this section. Behind this section, a crescent parting is taken and the colour tangerine applied to the root area. Then place a clear mesh underneath the slice and apply tangerine through to the middle lengths and ends, continuing this application throughout the rest of the section. Siobhan's final section is the area on the top of the head. The section is split into two, using a wave parting through the profile. Starting on the right side, a smaller wave parting, the width of the section is taken. Rose hip is applied as a small root area. A mesh is placed underneath the section, pre-lightener is applied to the mid-lengths and ends a few inches away from the root area and mesh extension is used. Then, turning the brush onto the angle, the pre-lightener is blushed into the root area. The section is then isolated off the clear mesh. A second wave parting is taken and damson is applied to the medium root area. The root area is getting longer as you move towards the top of the head. A mesh is placed underneath the section. The pre-lightener application is repeated on the mid-lengths and ends and then blushing the two colours together. This technique is then repeated on the opposite side. The same method is worked using a shorter root area internally and a longer root area through the top of the head. Francesco is now working on the top section. The coloured denim is applied to the outline of the remaining of this top section. Then taking horizontal partings, the coloured denim is applied to the root area. A waved parting is taken and working now from the back. The roots are cross-checked by working across the section and denim is taken through to the mid-lengths and ends. Repeat this application until the top of the crown area. Isolate this off with the clear mesh. With the remaining section, An alternating root extension is utilised to create a play on the root shadowing. Both of the techniques are now developed. Shampooed, on chevons it will be toned at the basin for 20 minutes. With two techniques complete, the longer shape, both cut and now colour, inspired by the 70s and highlighting the boho finish with an eclectic colour palette. On the shorter shape, working with a bold contrasting palette, creating structure, a geometric silhouette and a clash of colour inspired from the 15-16 runway shows. By using variations of the crescent technique and always working with individual suitability of the colour palette, endless results can be achieved. It is this freedom of creative approach to hairdressing that enables us to be forever progressive in our collections year on year.